Story 1. When I used to work in fast food, I got so sick of people who would threaten us, assault our women coworkers, and were just so rude. I hated going out in public. So when I was not at work, I hated going out and being around people. Story 2. Working as a developer made me realize that how we interact with the world is mostly through systems and how they are designed. There is no use in being angry with individuals who make decisions influenced by a system and the incentives and barriers it provides. Any solution that is just "we must be better individuals," I can no longer take seriously. There is no point at which all your users will be educated enough to avoid making the mistakes that result from the path of least resistance. This insight has informed my view on many things outside of software as well. Story 3. Working with individuals who do not help themselves has made me cynical. I no longer feel like the kind person I once was. Story 4. My job showed me I could be good at something, one of the best even. It also showed me that I deserved to be treated well. My job was the first time in my life I was told by others that I was worthy as a person in my own right, not just because of my ability to serve other people. Story 5. I was a 911 operator for many years, and it made me see the worst in people. I guess it is not subtle, but I am much colder to people with superficial problems and extremely blunt when choosing my words after working that job. Story 6. For a period of time, I stopped caring about my safety and well-being. So I need to climb there with non-working safety equipment, and if I slip, I will fall right into a high-voltage line and be fried to a crisp? Yeah, whatever. Give me the screwdriver. I don't know. It's just that when you do this for a long enough time and become both physically and mentally exhausted, you just don't care anymore. I got an office job sometime after that, and looking back, I'm kind of shocked at how careless I was. Story 7. Turned me from an introvert into a problem-solving extrovert. It is strange being a stranger to your old self. Story 8. Teaching. I can handle people better and cut through nonsense more easily. I can sometimes project authority convincingly enough to be persuasive or commanding when needed. After years of teaching diverse populations, I find that I do not have the fear of black people that even my most liberal and not overtly or intentionally racist friends who grew up with me in Whiteytown, USA often have. I have observed friends stiffen up and get nervous walking past a group of black teenagers, as if they are anticipating gang activity or something. I think, it is just some kids having fun. And I assure you that the kid reading manga on his stoop has never robbed anyone. Story 9. I began working with people 15 to 20 years younger than me in a job that requires being a lot more talkative, which I have never been. Story 10. Most changes are good. Forced me to open up more and be extroverted to a degree. I am a better listener with more patience. Respect has become a core value. I have done a lot of work on personal boundaries. I have learned to clarify my thoughts. However, I am also somewhat jaded and not generous with my free time. Story 11. I worked as a legal assistant for 5 years, primarily in civil litigation. I became more attuned to the ways people struggled, how much support they needed from us, and how confusing the entire legal process was for them. At first, I found it difficult to separate my emotions from the cases I worked on because the situations were often very stressful. But after a while, I got better at creating boundaries while still remaining sympathetic to the clients we worked with. Although my job had many challenges, I appreciated this part. Story 12. I worked as a host for the first time, and strangely enough, it taught me how to say no to people and stand up for myself more. Usually, I said no to my manager, but sometimes to customers who were unreasonable. Story 13. I got a job early on in Colorado's legal cannabis industry doing extractions. Before this, I was a burnout, depressed introvert feeling like I would never be good at anything. I got the job mainly because a friend of mine was working there. They told them I knew how to fix things and could keep the lab running. I knew nothing about making hash. Well, it turns out I was pretty good at it. At one point, I was making over 10 pounds of concentrates a day, completely on my own. They were good too. I won a couple of awards. Sure, I had zero social life and was in the lab over 60 hours a week, but it gave me confidence. When the industry declined in 2017, I went back to school and earned an engineering degree. Somehow, I landed a job at a national laboratory after graduation. I believe it all comes from the confidence in my own abilities that job gave me. Before it, I was sure I would be broke and lazy for the rest of my life. Story 14. I switched from secretarial work to driving a taxi. It coarsened me somewhat, but it also gave me great confidence and problem-solving skills. I became tougher and more inclined to take no nonsense from anyone. Story 15. Working with individuals experiencing mental illness has changed my tolerance for people in general. I have become more introverted because of it. Story 16. I am a completely different person than I was before. In some aspects, it has been good, and in others, not so much. I am a corrections officer. Before becoming one, I was very quiet and introverted. Now, I am more talkative and outgoing when I have the time. I am not afraid to have a conversation. The downside is that you can never really trust anyone because you see manipulation used by inmates, co-workers, and supervisors. Story 17. Working with elderly people in assisted living, you don't realize how lucky you are to have even simple things like mobility. It definitely made me more grateful for the little things in life. I am more patient and open-minded after working with people who require patience and understanding. Story 18. During law school, I started using legal language all the time, and I hated it. One day, I came back to my apartment at night after a long day. A ginger cat I had never seen before was sitting in the middle of my room. He was not scared of me, just bored by my presence. I said, "Hello, Your Honor is a cat." He answered, "Meow." I said, "Just as I argued, Your Honor is a cat." This felt very stupid at the time. Story 19. I got a retail job in high school. I was always a quiet, shy, introverted person. The job forced me to talk to customers and initiate conversations. Now, I can talk to anyone and everyone. It wasn't until years later that I realized how valuable that experience was. Story 20. I work in pathology, dissecting laboratory animals for cancer research. Before that, I spent 10 years in animal husbandry and veterinary medicine. Many people who claim to love animals cannot imagine the number of animals I euthanize daily. They do not realize that a humane death is one of the greatest gifts we can give to an animal, whether it is a laboratory mouse or your own pet. Despite the difficult tasks I perform every day, my work has made me deeply aware of the sanctity of life. All living things have value and deserve to have a purpose and a peaceful end. Story 21. Working in my job has made me much more composed under pressure. I used to react quickly and emotionally. Now I pause, calculate, and sometimes suppress things to keep everything running smoothly. This has helped me in tough situations, but I also catch myself being a little too controlled sometimes, as if I am filtering everything. I am still figuring out if I like this version of myself. The calm is useful, but I miss being more raw and expressive. Story 22. I decided to become more polite in my interactions with people. Here in Finland, we, on average, come across as curt in day-to-day interactions. I lived in Ireland for a while about 25 years ago, and there I learned to be more polite just by doing what other people did. For example, in a shop, if asked a question, I would say yes please or no thank you instead of just yes or no as a Finn would. I got comfortable doing it, and it also made me feel good about myself for being polite like others around me. I took that back to Finland and started doing it in Finnish too. Now it is automatic, and I often listen to other people's interactions, and they seem curt or even rude to me. Story 23. I worked for a large concrete company, starting as basic labor. Within 2 years, I doubled my starting pay and became a plant supervisor in a fully automated plant. When pay raise time came around, I was fighting to get good money for my best workers. I quickly found out that leadership, from my boss to the chief executive officer, was completely and utterly racist. They refused to pay minorities equally, among other things. Simultaneously, my spouse was diagnosed with cancer. The combination of what transpired in the following months resulted in strong, open, and immediate boundary setting. I make it very clear that I will not accept unprofessional treatment toward anyone at any time. I wish I had been that way when I started at that company. I believe my current career path would be in a far better place and will be in the future as a result of this. Story 24. I was skeptical before, but still believed that hard work made a difference. It does not. I am now deeply cynical. Story 25. I spent 15 years working for the Department of the Interior at agencies like the National Park Service and Bureau of Land Management. At one point, I realized that I had not gone outdoors for my own personal fun and recreation in about a decade. The idea of essentially doing my job for free on my day off was not appealing. I do not know if I like what I became because of it, but I know I have grown tired of my job. Turned fun activities into a miserable chore. Story 26. I started working in therapy 4 or 5 years ago. I learned the hard way to build strong boundaries where I can have rapport and connection with my clients without getting attached. Now I cannot feel anything with friends or romantic partners, and I am emotionally blocked off from others because I train myself to do so. I am working on it in therapy and have good relationships. I just want to feel things again. Story 27. My job has helped me socialize more, and I have become more extroverted than introverted. I have even built up the courage to conduct in-person training courses with end users on our company systems. Story 28. I am generally a positive and optimistic person, but I started a job where everyone was sour and cynical, and I began to become more like them. I was glad I did not stay there long. Story 29. Working in organ donation has given me intrusive thoughts and harm obsessive-compulsive disorder like no other. So I will probably become an overly cautious helicopter parent. Story 30. Worked in landscaping and encountered many of the old-fashioned blue-collar labor stereotypes, which were really just excuses for poor behavior and resentment toward anyone more successful. It made me okay with acting poorly because I told myself, I'm just being myself. In reality, I was being immature and trying to justify it. I am still working out the issues 5 years later. Story 31. I have been working as an aircraft mechanic for almost 8 years now. I have become somewhat unpleasant since I started. I remember people used to describe me as the sweetest person ever before working here. The constant ego problems, frequent yelling over minor issues that do not really matter, and favoritism have made me bitter. I do not often tell people off, but my friend mentioned that the way I talk has changed. To be honest, I do not like it. Story 32. When I was a correctional officer, I always had to watch my back. Now, I do not like people behind me and always sit facing the door. It is nice, I guess, because staying aware is always a good thing. Story 33. Registered nurse and nurse practitioner here. Fortunate to have done travel assignments throughout the United States, originally from California. Worked abroad in New Zealand, Australia, Italy, and for the United States Military Hospital, as well as now living in the European Union. It has truly opened my eyes to cultural considerations and helped me provide the best patient care. My certifications and degrees are proof of my hard work in theory, but being there for my patients with a humanistic touch and knowing the right words to say is priceless. I am grateful to those I have met throughout my career who have helped me focus on the importance of caring and compassion. Story 34. It made me hate humans even more than I already did. I like myself more because of it. I am no longer desperate for their approval or acceptance. Story 35. I used to work in a stressful customer service job for 6 years. I became angrier, always on edge, and stressed. I was not like that before. Fortunately, I left that field, and now I try my best to be the old me. Story 36. A job I recently left made me very doubtful of anything said verbally. I refused to accept anything at face value and would not do what was asked unless it was emailed to me or on a recorded call. I hated this because I am a trusting person who is upfront and accountable for what I do and say, and I expect that from others. Story 37. I work in a school setting where they focus a lot on a growth mindset. I definitely see toxic positivity meshed with it. I like the idea that I can get better at whatever I am currently struggling with. It makes me want to try new things and reminds me that I will not be perfect at it right away, and that is okay. It has helped me branch out, and I am glad for the opportunities it has presented me. Story 38. I am a much better customer when interacting with customer service representatives after spending 14 years working in customer service. I never once ended a day feeling it was great because I had to tolerate a series of entitled and rude individuals throughout the day. Story 39. Social worker here. Not so subtle. But I automatically zone out noise like arguments and loud voices when out in public. It annoys my wife. Story 40. During plant operations, my troubleshooting skills became razor sharp. I carry that into day-to-day life now. It can make you seem very smart sometimes, but can also cause you to fixate too much or miss the point of something completely. Story 41. Serving in the Marines made me definitely more extroverted, blunt, and a little more short-tempered. I also somehow curse a lot more than before, which was already a lot. Honestly, it is both a blessing and a curse. The bluntness is usually well liked in the corporate world because I find most people do not speak their minds as much at work. My delivery definitely needed some work, and as the years have passed, my filter has improved a lot. The short temper is definitely a downside, but it mainly comes out when dealing with frustrating people. Story 42. Working in software for over 10 years, I learned quickly that you need to separate your ego from the work you are producing. There is nothing like a couple of code reviews from senior engineers that tear your work and creative ideas to pieces, backed by valid reasoning and experience, to help your growth. It is painful, though, and it should be. Overall, I think it has made me more objective towards solving problems and achieving outcomes. Story 43. I was a paraprofessional working in an emotional and behavioral disorders self-contained classroom with a teacher who was there for himself and not the students, and it was very disastrous. There were many ways the class could have been run better. Skills we could and should have been teaching those children, but he just did not care. I started in 2023 and left this past May. Being in that classroom was making me bitter and extremely apathetic towards the students and the teacher I was working with. I am now officially a first-grade teacher with my own classroom. I hope that I will love teaching despite all the challenges that come with the field and can make a real difference in children's lives. Story 44. Working in customer service for 3 years taught me to read people's moods instantly. I can walk into a room now and immediately sense the tension or energy, which honestly makes me feel like I have some kind of superpower. Story 45. I used to be a bar manager and bartender in an underground nightclub. Seeing how groups of men would move around trying to get with a woman, then move on to the next after being rejected made me feel uncomfortable. I saw the same groups of women being approached all night. Just leave them alone. Now, when I go out, I don't approach women or even try to flirt. It ruined my dating chances, but I feel morally better. I don't know. Story 46. Working in childcare and education, I will have a hard time choosing a baby name. I am more cynical than I used to be. Everyone is out for themselves, and if parents do not care, neither will the students. Story 47. I worked in retail for a couple of years. I hated that job, but the money was decent. I would never go back to that kind of work again, but it helped me become more extroverted. I was very nervous every time I had to interact with a customer. Oddly enough, the people who were jerks helped me the most, in the sense that I stopped caring about how customers treated me, particularly those obnoxious ones. At the same time, I learned how not to treat people in that kind of job or any job. Not that I have ever been rude, but being in their shoes made me have more empathy toward them. Story 48. I became much more direct. When you have limited time and high stakes, there is no room for unnecessary details. I do not sugarcoat things as much anymore, and honestly, it has been a great skill to save time in meetings. Story 49. Becoming a dispatcher for a labor service job burned me out on a molecular level. My friends told me multiple times it was slowly killing me, but I did not realize how much stress I was under, whether or not I was on the clock until I left. A few years and a couple of different employers later, I am still programmed to react to many situations more defensively than necessary out of self-preservation. I recognize the difference in myself and try to consciously combat the urge, but it still feels incredibly foreign to believe your employer is not actively working against your well-being. Not to mention how insane it is that so many people promote that toxic mentality in the hopes the company might make slightly more profit to hoard. Since I am living and working in America, maybe I should not let myself become too complacent. I will be sure to savor the current respect until our system beats the empathy out of them, too. I did not plan on talking myself from gratitude to pessimism this quickly. Story 50. Absolutely. I matured and started developing as a professional. Moving out of my family home also helped. Story 51. Medical residency changed me for the worse in many ways. I stopped being able to cry, became misanthropic, and lost much of the intrinsic motivation that got me there. 3 years later, I am doing much better and love my job now, but I am still not the person I was, and I miss her. Though I am reliable in an emergency and can think quickly on my feet, that is not to mention the ability to function with little sleep and long hours when needed. Story 52. My restaurant job taught me to work calmly and quickly under pressure, which has been a vital skill to develop. I don't need to perform like that often, but when I do, I am in complete control, and people who aren't used to working that way trust me and my decision-making in the moment. My previous job was a lot of fun, so I had to learn how to be an engaging host and the life of the party. I use that skill far less, but it is good to know how to do. For example, I throw an excellent party now. Story 53. I am now less organized when it comes to my schedules. I want to put everything in Excel, and I am constantly searching for common misspellings. Story 54. Working in information technology support definitely made me more analytical but also more flexible. Having to abandon whatever I am currently doing if an emergency arises, or sometimes being interrupted while going for a coffee, means I do not get as much chance to do my other work for long periods. As for whether I like it, I find that some people just want someone to commiserate with when they have a bad day or are complaining. I often start looking for solutions and am frequently tasked with figuring other problems out, so not really. Story 55. It has changed who I have empathy for. I work in social services and have seen generations come through, knowing some of them have virtually no chance at success because their high school dropout parents gave them names like Desire or Chima and raised them in situations where they are evicted every year. They get hooked on drugs and alcohol early and never have stability or role models. I have more sympathy for those children raised for failure and less for their parents, who are content not only to waste their lives but also to have children and harm the next generation. Story 56. I had to learn to be careful when helping people because it could end up harming my life or career. Story 57. Joining the military taught me that I love when things have structure. There is an order to how things are done. It also taught me to plan as much as possible to maximize my time. Story 58. Ever since I got into legal work, I have definitely been acting arrogantly and will occasionally use my fingers to comb my hair. Story 59. Non-consensually became a government experiment. Pay is 0, and the hours are 24/7. It is extremely stressful, but I have become a stronger person from it. Story 60. I used to be indecisive, but in the United States Marine Corps, it was drilled into us that even a bad plan, if violently executed, is better than no action at all. Now, when I am in a group and everyone is hesitating, trying to see what others want to do, I pick an option and suggest it, sometimes even at random. I do not insist on that option, but just someone saying something encourages people to agree or disagree instead of passively waiting. I would say it is a good change. Story 61. Attitude towards others. It is always give and take. Do not become attached to anyone. It is not worth the time. Everyone is in their own race. Understand this. They are ready to crush you. Story 62. I am much more detail-oriented and obsessive-compulsive these days. I think people find it tiring, and to a certain extent, it also makes my life more difficult since I am constantly striving for near-impossible standards in everything. Story 63. Before my job, I was unemployed for long periods of time. I graduated college 2 years ago. I spent most of my time going on drives, wasting gas, and hardly had any money saved. Now I am taking more initiative in my financial life. I do not go out on drives as much, nor do I spend much money eating out or doing leisure activities like going to the movies. Personality-wise, I would say I went from being a little irresponsible to being more responsible and mindful of my financial means. Story 64. It's wild, but I did not see the shift. My friends did, though. I had a visceral reaction to the United States election results in November. Acting on that emotion, I left a stable and comfortable corporate job to return to public service on a contract to help my local area survive the storm I knew was coming. Fast forward to this past weekend, I am currently deciding between keeping a very intense, high-pressure government position or continuing to a third interview with a less intense nonprofit job, and I asked my friend for advice. I reviewed my options, and my dear friend told me that I should switch. My joy is gone. They used to always call me the Candide of our friend group, but lately I have stopped countering negative talk with a positive outlook. When I told my husband that, he said he missed the version of me that liked things and people. When I asked my 18-year-old son, he said he understood why I chose personal sadness over the prospect of being part of the solution. I decided to take the third interview. I spent 15 years in nonprofits before burning out and taking a corporate job. I have been in public service for 7 months in Donald Trump's America, and my heart can't take the continual breaking required to keep going there. Story 65. We had a dress code of pastels, and it really brightened up my closet. I used to own mostly black clothing, but now I have a rainbow of options to wear. Story 66. For over 15 years, I was the on-site customer-facing help desk. I was called in when problems arose. The one thing that rewired my brain was the ability to manage expectations. Sounds simple, but it took me a few years to learn how to do it correctly. Now, everything I do with other people starts with explaining how we are going to do something, from the simplest tasks to the most complicated, with the exception of my wife. I just expect her to know. Story 67. I have been in the military for 23 years. It has conditioned me to see every problem as solvable. If not immediately, then it becomes an action item until we resolve it. I am lucky to have a wife who has helped me realize that some issues are okay to let linger and some do not require solutions. On a positive note, I am also more attuned to recognizing someone's intentions and better able to determine threats, whether they are personality-based or physical. I suppose this has made me more cautious during initial meetings. Story 68. I was a veterinary technician for a surgical specialty practice. I do not like the anxiety I experienced when changing careers. Story 69. I worked in a call center for 8 years, and it made me extremely dislike talking on the phone. I will text you all day long, but please do not make me talk on the phone. I have been criticized for being a typical millennial who does not like talking on the phone, but I used to spend hours on the phone in high school and college. The call center beat it out of me. I also worked as a proposal writer. One of the things we had to do was make sure we actually answered the question the request for proposal asked, so I have a very low tolerance for people who do not answer the question I am asking. My husband especially annoys me with this because I will ask him a yes or no question, and he will respond with, "I can. I know you can. I want to know if you will or if I have to do it." Story 70. My job made me understand that it is not always necessary to speak out. It is more important to listen to people and understand their problems, as many people just need someone to ask them about their problems. Story 71. I am not in sales, but I had to sell and promote the company I started in a very saturated industry. I am by nature an introvert, but that does not cut it when you have to support a family and make payroll. I became fairly good at selling and marketing, and it took me years to realize that the tendency to need to be liked in order to get the sale severely affected my personal life. I needed to be liked by everyone. When I came to this awareness, the challenge of turning off work me versus real-life me was excruciating at times. The lines blurred, and to this day I still have to be very conscious of this dilemma because whether or not someone likes me in real life is none of my business. Story 72. Lawyer, commercial, and corporate litigation. My job is to steer toward the best possible outcome on a given problem and to overwhelm, outmaneuver, or otherwise convince whatever is in the way to provide the desired result. Uncertainty is broken down, managed, controlled, and outcomes fall within a known range. It has had profound effects in my personal life, both good and bad. On the one hand, things are pretty smooth and outwardly quite successful. The skills work wonders for almost any defined context, problem, or interpersonal situation. On the other hand, I suffer what my friends call limiting beliefs, that only the desired outcome is the right outcome. It causes me a lot of stress when presented with uncertain or incalculable future possibilities, such as taking the leap to have children. considering my husband's potential overseas move for his career and its impact on mine. It is impossible to control the variables sufficiently to have confidence in saying, yes, this is best for us and we should move forward. Then I end up researching the issue to exhaustion and exhausting myself. It is a double-edged sword for sure. I have had to step back and confront my extreme discomfort with uncertainty. I'm not necessarily able to go with the flow yet, still impossible. But at least I am getting better at avoiding mental health storms when faced with what I now perceive as enormous and variable risks to my favorite outcomes on important matters. My identity as a woman post-motherhood, the sanctity of career and independence, and so on. The job has convinced me that if everyone had at least mild anxiety, most litigation would never exist. A little paranoia can go a long way in preventing financial and legal problems. Story 73. I don't like talking or interacting with people I don't know or like, and I was forced to interact and speak to people I didn't know or like every day because of The Office. I basically learned acting, using a different character or personality depending on what I think the person I'm forced to interact with wants to hear and deal with. It can be mentally exhausting, but it helps pass the day until I can go home. I don't think it changed my personality for the better. It's how I deal with being forced to do things I didn't want to do as part of the workforce and give the unknowing strangers what I thought they wanted so they will leave me alone. It's probably not great for making friends if I'm treating everyone I don't know like a random customer, but it pays the bills so far. Story 74. Having a series of unpleasant jobs has made me considerably less tolerant of poor working conditions overall. I stand up for myself when I feel I am being taken advantage of and talk to my supervisors when I think something could be done better. I also have no tolerance for endless jobs now. I only take jobs where there is a tangible endpoint and goal to the work. Volunteering with a grassroots low-income organizing drive has made me much more open-minded and compassionate toward others who are struggling, especially financially. It has made me realize that capitalism is by nature extremely unfair, and it is the small percentage of wealthy elites that dictate legal and social policies that hurt the rest of us in the working and remaining middle class. It has made me a firm believer that it is high time we push back against these policies that are often literally killing our most vulnerable demographics and make our voices heard. To quote the network, we are mad as hell and not going to take it anymore. Story 75. I used to be one of the most laid-back, unflappable people anyone had ever met. Now I am an anxious mess all the time. When I am not at work, I cannot be comfortable, and the further away from a computer I get, the more anxious I feel. You never know when a serious threat is going to drop right on top of you. Story 76. My first profession makes me a social butterfly and keeps me composed in stressful situations, while my second profession has shaped me into an introverted logical problem solver. Story 77. Currently, I work at Food Lion because of school. I have realized how completely ignorant some people can be. Many times, people try to break you down because of where you work and your position. I have learned to become indifferent and ignore what others say about me. While I appreciate this change because I used to care deeply, I also see the downside. People do not deserve to be treated badly, but at the same time, some people deserve the consequences of their actions. Just because you hurt me does not mean I have to tolerate it. Story 78. With my current supervisors, I learned to be calm and appreciate their consideration for the mental health of the team members. It was a great relief when they said, "Let's call it a night and take a rest." It has been music to my ears for 4 years. Story 79. Working in finance made me more conscientious of money but simultaneously more relaxed about it. Going from $8 an hour cleaning toilets to spending $8 on Starbucks without fretting has been nice when you have the real knowledge that splurges are fine within your means. Story 80. Working as a scientist and my ongoing education have changed me significantly in the last couple of years. I read more, think more critically, and am slower to react with anger than I used to be as a young man. This is likely due to the constant flow of edits, corrections, and changes required by my superiors and co-authors during the publication process. I went from someone who thought everything I wrote was perfect in early college to realizing I am not infallible. Overall, it feels good. I like academia so far, even though it is not for everybody. I have come into my own and met some great, like-minded people. I am still a student, but I have published and get paid for it, so I embrace my scientist title early. Feels like I have checked some boxes already. Story 81. I'm really good at my trade, so I started a business doing it. Then my life became sales calls, collecting money, and stressing about finances. I couldn't sleep and hardly got to do what I enjoy. It was awful. It was a good experience, but I am happy it is over. Story 82. Teaching changed me for the worse. I have to be extroverted, loud, a therapist, among many other roles, and I simply cannot turn off those traits outside of the job anymore. This is why I am leaving the position. Story 83. As a software engineer who has been moving from startup to startup over the past 6 years, the ups and downs in my life are no longer my decision. It is up to whatever decisions a vice president or chief technology officer makes that drive my life into the ground. The amount of time I have wasted being stressed because of arbitrary deadlines that say, because I said so, nothing ever ends. I want to leave the field entirely. Story 84, working in customer service, software support, and video game support, where I was a game master in a major, massively multiplayer online game, made me hate people and almost drove me to suicide. I have never really recovered from the years I spent acting as a human shield for large, unethical corporations. My job was literally to be mistreated by people who had been wronged by the company. Everyone who makes the policy is completely insulated and never has to speak to a customer. I am not happy with how this fundamentally changed my opinion of humans. It makes it hard to function, and I would say it has ruined my life to some extent. Story 85. Bluntly, I grew a backbone and stopped being such a people pleaser. I'm a confinement officer, and obviously, inmates will try to take advantage of you and push you around to get what they want. I grew up never saying no to anybody, and now I do not care and will say how I feel. Story 86. I was a fairly quiet, go with the flow, and don't make waves type of person. I have worked in the construction industry for about 15 years now and had to learn to stand up for myself and ensure I am heard when I have something to say. I learned to stop caring so much about what other people think and not get offended easily. I like who I am now, as I feel at ease to show my personality more and be less reserved around other people. Story 87. Data analyst. This career path is often undervalued unless you work for a company that commoditizes data for profit. I am pursuing this role because I need a position that offers work-life balance and a semi-comfortable standard of living. I previously tried accounting and finance but left because I did not want to be tied to my job every month, quarter, or year-end. Since it is a constant struggle to justify one's existence in this role, my ambition has largely diminished. Story 88. Years of working in retail have truly made me sick of people. The general population is just so selfish, inconsiderate, and seemingly unable or unwilling to grasp basic concepts. I try not to be that way, but when I'm out of work, the last thing I want is to be around anybody. On top of that, and I know this sounds unusual, I put on whatever music I feel like listening to all day. The catch is, I have to have music playing all day. It has burnt me out on music. I used to love it. I would seek it out, make music, and get excited about new stuff. I just don't care anymore. It's not that I don't enjoy songs anymore, but it's not the way it used to be, that's for sure. Story 89. My job made me much more judgmental and depressed. It helped me realize that I really hate humanity. Considering that it undid years of work I put into myself and my mental health, I cannot say I like who I became. Story 90. Working with middle school students at an after-school program gave me a much wider perspective on the world and made me more patient and better at setting boundaries. My coworkers were incredibly kind and helped me feel more comfortable in my own skin when interacting with people in person. I miss my job a lot, and honestly, not being able to work and being part-time housebound has caused me to regress a bit. Story 91. Working in the food business, people treat you poorly, and if you are good, people treat you like their butler and make rude gestures such as snapping fingers. It brought out a level of hatred I did not think I had in me. I quit after 6 long years, and I am slowly healing from it. Story 92. I worked a call center job years ago, and it helped me overcome the fear of calling people and get used to hearing my own voice. In my last job, I was head of a managed service provider team, which required me to handle conflicts frequently. Now, I am no longer afraid of conflict. I do not seek it out, but I am more prepared to stand my ground and respond. Even if what I am defending is not entirely correct, I have made it a habit to shut down the initial wave of accusations and frustration. We can determine whose fault it really is after emotions have calmed down. I will not allow myself or those I am protecting to be yelled at or attacked out of anger or frustration. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.